Let's bring in national trial attorney Michael Jaafar, who's joining us. Thank you for joining us both. Michael, I still can't make up my mind yet as we're listening to evidence. I know we're going to hear about a lot of allegations of him being a batterer and abuser, violent, and that this was self-defense. But where do you stand right now, as I think both the prosecution and defense are being they're very adept at presenting their case well?
I think as a defense attorney in this case, you have to find a way to paint this person as a monster. We just saw the Marsha Thompson case. They successfully painted the victim, the decedent, as a monster, right, with admissible evidence, admissible testimony. I don't know if the defense is going to be able to do that here, right? I mean, he's a veteran, but he was 30 years older than her. And I keep coming back to the custody hearing where after testimony, the judge in that case said, and I can't believe this, how visceral it was, he did not find a scintilla of credibility. I'll be straight up with you, Judge Ashley. I don't recall a time that a judge, in my experience, said such visceral words about in a custody hearing, a woman, you know, fighting over her child, a scintilla of credibility. So I don't know if the defense, they have a challenge to paint him as a monster, but they're going to have to paint him as a monster because the defense that they're going to claim, and they are claiming, is a subset of self-defense. You know, you have more liberty when you're saying, I was a battered wife. You don't have to stick to the strictures of self-defense like you would between two strangers, but they're going to have to paint him as a monster. So far, the case is going the way I think it's going, but in my opinion, the most important witnesses for the prosecution will be the crime scene reconstructionists. I really want to see what their analysis are, and I really want to see the cross-examination of them is going to look like. But so far, these experts, they're doing, you know, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But the trial is early. We got to see what happens.
Yeah, Michael, you know, you talk about this whole domestic violence aspect of this case. I honestly feel like that's the weakest part of the defense's case. And I mean, they had to, I guess they had to make that claim. I think they feel it's legit, no doubt. But there's certainly questions I think this jury might have, because we found out today, at least I found out, that the first time that he physically abused her was the day she shot him. So, you know, I think all that's going to raise questions for this jury. But at the end of the day, for me, it's going to boil down to whether they believe something happened that put her in a position where she feared for her life. Whether she was a battered wife or not, again, that raises the stakes a bit, but I'm not sure the defense is going to get there on that aspect.
If they can prove what she was saying before the trial, which is he promised her that I have ways of making people disappear. These are things that she's been on record saying. She's gonna have to testify, by the way. There's too much open questioning here. And we just saw in the Marsha Thompson, in my opinion, when you say that I defended myself under the battered spouse theory, you have to testify. So when she testifies, all of this, the jury has to believe her. In my opinion, juries tend towards the inflammatory. So there's been a lot of inflammatory pretrial things that have happened here. They're going to be introduced into the trial. But in my opinion, like she has to prove to the jury that this guy was a monster, or he was a saint, but he was reaching for a gun. He was going to kill me. He promised me he's going to kill me. He abused me that day. The jury has to find a nexus. We saw in the Marsha Thompson case, it was proven he was laying on a couch, not coming close to her, and they still acquitted her. So I've seen people get convicted with less, acquitted with more. So it really comes down to how the defense really structures this, and those crime scene reconstructionists are going to be very vital for both sides.
Yeah, and we've already seen there's an issue with where the body was, because it was moved, which is helpful to the defense to that end. And also, I will say this in terms of structuring their defense. The judge hasn't ruled yet if they'll be able to get their expert to testify that she suffered from battered woman syndrome.
That's right.
And Florida law is very specific on that. You have to have lived with the person. You have to have had repeated events of physical abuse. I'm not sure they're going to be able to argue battered wife syndrome.
That's right. And that was, I mean, there was a big development of the law as it changed in Florida, and I absolutely agree with you. So we're going to have to see what they can present and what the judge decides. All right, we need to squeeze in a break.